Can you guys hear me okay? Hello? Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you, Maria.
All right, thanks.
5:30 p.m., October 5th. I call this planning commission meeting to order. Paulo, may you please have the roll call?
Patty Case is absent. Cody Cornett,
Here.
Doug Grant,
Here.
Philip Mosher,
Here.
Maria Pena,
Here.
Mark Papa,
Here.
and Nick Partola.
Thank you. May you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
To
to the flag of the
United States of America,
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. If all the commissioners have had time to review the agenda, may I please have a motion to approve the agenda with a second?
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
The approval of the agenda has been motioned and seconded. All in favor of approving the agenda, raise your right hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Next is the
Aye.
approval of the minutes from the September 7th meeting, which was set in a separate packet. If all have reviewed those minutes and approved them, may I please have a motion to approve along with the second?
Motion to approve those minutes.
I'll second.
Thank you. The motion to approve the minutes from the September 7th meeting has been made and seconded. All in favor, raise your right hand, say aye.
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 Hi.
Now's the time for public comment. During this portion of the meeting, anyone may speak on any subject that does not later appear in the agenda. 5 minutes per person will be allowed. Hi there. When you come on up, just state your name and your address and speak clearly into the microphone.
Hello, my name is Jan Oldenburg, and my address is 2151 Radial Way. And why I am here is that I'm following up along with my neighbor Joyce Overing in regards to the council asking the Planning Commission to oversee new regulations and review of the short-term rentals and the Airbnbs. And from our understanding, the Planning Commission was to review that in September. You are looking at me like you don't know what I'm talking about.
We, as the Planning Commission, we just get this and that's what we talk about. So a lot of times we don't have a lot of control on what agenda is delivered to us, but maybe.
Yeah, I can answer that. The Planning Commission no longer oversees the short-term rentals. It was actually removed from the code which they oversee, which is Title 10. But we will, at the October 23rd meeting at City Council, we will have a discussion item with the council.
So it's a city council thing, not a planning commission thing.
So there, so you're getting it back to City Council then?
It's been
They
with,
gave it to you.
no, it's been with City Council for about 3 years. Yeah, so
Oh, interesting.
action
Okay.
was that the planning director, community development department is going to be presenting. We
Okay,
basically have a discussion on short-term rentals at the October 23rd City Council meeting.
that's good to know. Okay, cool. Thank
A
you.
couple years ago, short-term rentals used to be regulated through Title 10, which the Planning Commission would oversee. But it was removed a few years ago. So now it's just a license program. So it's a license program handled directly through the Community Development Department, not the planning aspect of community development. Confusing enough, probably.
Okay, so I'm trying to figure out, are we back to square one? Maybe, but
Square one, how?
in the sense that we, the neighbors in our area of the Dalles were under the understanding that the commission was going to look over, review regulations and do a review in regards to what other communities had done regarding more structure, more laws for Airbnbs and short-term rentals. So
Yeah, so
like we're doing that.
well, there will be a discussion with the council to determine what we will be doing. So the short-term rental license is only 3 years old. So we will probably take a look at some regulations, some changes to those regulations, but I have not been directed to look into what other cities have done. We did look into what other cities have done 3 years ago when we adopted it. But that may come out of council's direction. Yeah.
I respect that. A lot has changed in the meantime, and so this is what's going on now. So,
Right.
yeah. All right. Very good.
Yeah.
I do have another question for the commission, in regards to the dog parks here. Because I noticed that there's a temporary close on the so-called dog park. I don't know if it's an official dog park, but the area that is gated and fenced behind the Chamber of Commerce building. And apparently there was a incident where a woman was bitten, apparently, from what I understand. And so they closed it. And so we do have one dog park up on is it called the West End near the fire department and the other area of the Dalles. Still kind of new to the Dalles. And so, and I reviewed what they had posted there as far as rules, and it looked fairly good, except for I would have a suggestion that it would include no treats, no toys actually in the dog park, because that brings on jealousy with the dogs. But I wasn't sure through the rules there whether that was handled through the fire department or whether it's actually handled through the city. It looks like it's kind of regulated through the fire department.
Yeah.
sense.
I guess I'm not, is it across the street from the fire department?
No, it's down the street. Yeah, there's the fire department, then there's a kids playground, which is kind of weird because in order to get to the kids playground, you go through the gate that is the dog park. And then you take your kid across the dog park to the gate where you can have your kid play on the.
Yeah, so
things.
I would have to look into that further. I'm not too entirely sure who
Okay,
oversee that.
okay,
Yeah.
right. Because it's a good area, but it could be improved, especially if the city decides to not reopen the other area nor put any regulations.
The other area is privately owned by the Chamber of Commerce.
There you go. Okay, thanks, John, because I couldn't tell. And so that's why I'm saying it's kind of like it's a dog park, but not really. They've allowed people to let their dogs go there.
I think that this question probably isn't for the planning commission ourselves, and
Sounds like the council.
probably the council, probably Parks and Rec, maybe even. But I would
Parks and
start
Rec.
your inquiry with the planning department, and
Thank you.
thank you.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. All righty. Any other public comment on anything that's not later appearing on the agenda? Nope. Okay. So item 7, quasi judicial public hearing. Bear with me while I read the script. Now is the time specified for the planning commission to conduct a public hearing. The purpose of this public hearing is to consider the following matter. Appeal number 034-23 of the Community Development Director's conditional approval of minor partition 423-23 by Wasco Electric Cooperative, the appellant. The substantive criteria upon which the planning commission will base its decision in this matter are found in the Dalhousie Municipal Code of Land Use and Development Ordinance, Articles 9.020, 9.030, Sections 10.10.040, 10.10.100, and 10.10.110. A public hearing is required by law and certain rules apply. First and foremost, you must be recognized by the chair in order to speak and present testimony. When recognized by the chair, please unmute your microphone and state your name and mailing address for the record. The hearing is required by law to be tape recorded. Generally, the public hearing procedure is as follows. Prior to the public hearing, a determination will be made of the qualifications of the commission members and allow for challenges from the audience. I will open the public hearing with the staff report. The purpose of the staff report at this point is to further identify the applicable criteria of the case being considered and to provide background information about that case. After the staff report, we will hear testimony from the applicant. Next, we will hear testimony from the proponents, those in favor of the application. Next, there will be testimony from the opponents, those not in favor of the application. Next, there will be testimony from anyone else who wishes to offer testimony or ask questions. Then, to honor the right of rebuttal, we will again hear from the proponents. To expedite the hearing, the commission members may ask questions of any person as they testify. When this process has been concluded, we will close the public testimony portion of the hearing. During the hearing, some important standards apply. First of all, those who testify must hold their testimony to the decision criteria. As in all land use hearings, there are a complete set of rules, procedures, and criteria we must follow. Second, failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the commission members and the parties an opportunity to respond to that issue precludes an appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. Third, the failure of an applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to the proposed conditions of the approval with details specific enough to allow the city to respond to the issue precludes any action for damages in the circuit court. Fourth, prior to the conclusion of the public hearing, any participant may request to present additional evidence, arguments, or testimony regarding the application. If such a request is made, the law states the commission must grant the request by either continuing the hearing to a time and date at least 7 days from the date of the initial hearing, or the record must be kept open for a period of at least 7 days. These are the rules. Are there any questions?
Nope. No questions.
Have any members of the commission had any ex parte contacts, conflicts of interest, or bias which would prevent you from rendering an impartial decision or on this matter?
Nope.
No.
Nope. Does anyone in the audience wish to challenge the qualifications of any members of the commission? Nope. The public hearing is now open. May we please have the staff report?
Good evening, commissioners. Just a moment here while I share my screen. All right. So my name is Caitlin Cook. I'm a planner with the City of the Dallas Community Development Department. So just before we get started here, I have a couple of announcements. Josh Soper is here to provide special counsel via Zoom this evening. And the commission has also received a copy of the original application for the minor partition application on the dais this evening, and a copy has been emailed to Maria Pena as well. So getting started. So tonight we're hearing an a petition to appeal So tonight we're hearing an application to appeal a minor partition application to reconfigure 6 tax lots into 2 parcels, or 2 tax lots. So parcel 1 would be reconfigured into 1.9 acres and parcel 2 would be reconfigured into 3.2 acres. Now these properties are within the general commercial zone. And their address is 730 Pomona Street and 3021 West 7th Street. So you can see this is a map of the subject property. This is the current tax lots lines. This proposed replat abuts Pomona Street and West 7th Street. And then you can see the proposed replat turns those 6 tax lots into 2 parcels. Parcel 1 is an unimproved tax lot, and parcel 2 is Wasco Electric Cooperative. Parcel 1, as staff kind of looked into this parcel, we found that there has been, maybe some storage of recreational vehicles, and some other products. We've looked for clarification if they've had any prior land use approval for this use, and we couldn't find any at that time. So at this point, we're just calling it an unimproved lot for this purposes. There were 3 comments received on this application. The first was from Tennyson Engineering. They provided a comment to add additional information on their basis for appeal. To summarize, they stated that they are appealing finding 19 in the original staff report that outlined the improvements required with development. And they also said that they are interested in a delayed development agreement for the improvements of parcel 1, but are not interested in installing the required improvements for parcel 1. We received two comment from Gabe Deuce and a comment from Brian Lauterbach. These individuals, I'm going to kind of summarize both of them together. They are in opposition of the minor partition application. They do not view this land division as a good use for this zone, and they question if Mr. Lewis, the owner of parcel 1, provided approval for such application. So I just wanted to touch base on these comments really quickly. So Mr. Lewis has signed the original minor partition application that is typically required when any two property owners go into or apply for a minor partition or a replat. And because he provided that signature, we don't have any reason to believe that he provided signature under unforeseen circumstances. So today we are really going to be addressing the code requirements, and in the event that Mr. Lewis would not like to go forward with the replat, he will get that opportunity prior to the final recording of the replat. So basically on that final plat, he'll need to provide signature on the final plat, and it will need to be notarized. So going over the project timeline here. So the minor partition application went to site team on March 9th. During this meeting, we did discuss the required improvements with this development. That included the removal of 2 seemingly unutilized drive approaches, updating 3 drive approaches to current city standard, and installing new sidewalk panels. They chose to go through with this application, and it was approved with conditions on August 18th, 2023. The appeal was filed subsequently. The appeal was deemed complete on August 30th. We sent a notice on September 7th, and then the applicant submitted a timeline extension request on September 16th because it was originally scheduled for the previous planning commission to this one, and it provided some scheduling conflicts with the applicant and their surveyor. So that 120-day timeline extension that's required with all land use applications was extended into November. And then it was moved to this planning commission here today. So the minor partition, so with all land use applications, we have conditions of approval. So with this condition of approval, it's required prior to final plat approval. So the condition of approval that we're discussing here today is that all right-of-way improvements abutting parcel 1 and 2 be installed. Now, this was included in the original minor partition staff report, and it was a condition of approval required with finding 19 in the original minor partition staff report. So this is a map of the required improvements with the original minor partition or the original replat application. As you can see, there are 5 points on this map. Only 2 of these required improvements are being appealed today. So these required improvements is the installation of a drive approach or sidewalk on Pomona Street, and the installation of a drive approach that's to city standard or sidewalk panels on West 7th Street. So this is a picture of the current conditions on Pomona Street that abuts parcel 1. As you can see, there is a gravel drive approach that enters the property, and there is no curb or sidewalk on this portion of property. So that highlighted yellow area there designates where the required improvements would be. This comes out to be about 20 feet of sidewalk with a city standard drive approach. This is the current conditions on West 7th Street. As you can see from the picture here, there is a drive approach and a fence in front of the subsequent drive approach. Now this drive approach staff has looked into, and it does not meet current city standards. So either this drive approach would need to be brought into current city standards, which are ADA compliant standards, or they would need to be replaced with sidewalk panels. And I highlighted it there. This is a small portion of the frontage on West 7th Street. It's the entire portion on West 7th Street is about it's about 120 feet of street frontage on West 7th Street. And this is only the small portion of that street frontage that is required to be brought into compliance with this application. So this is an example of a city standard drive approach. This is by no means what they are required to put in. It's really dependent on their specific like sidewalk and curb design for the street. So this is an example of a typical city standard drive approaches. I would like to note that these drive approaches are built to ADA standards. So in this section of the code here, it talks about requiring improvements prior to a final plat approval. And I brought this up to the commission's attention today, really to read the first portion of this zone, of this criteria. And it reads like this. So prior to final plat approval for a partition of non-residentially zoned property on which no existing residential structure is located, the applicant has installed or executed a deferred development agreement or has gained approval to form an improvement district for installation of required improvements in accordance with provisions of Chapter 1010 improvements required with development. So taking a look at this, both of these tax lots or these proposed parcels do not have any residentially zoned property, and there's no residential structure on these properties. So the applicant has an option prior to final plat approval, either to install the required improvements or to enter into a deferred development agreement. And I'll get into the deferred development agreement in the subsequent slides. So the interpretation at issue here is in the Dallas Municipal Code 1010-40D, which states to provide for orderly development of an effective pedestrian network, pedestrian facilities installed concurrent with development of a site shall be extended through the site to the edge of the adjacent properties. So finding 19 in the original staff report for the minor partition was described all the required improvements that would be required prior to the final plat approval. And just to kind of talk about the pedestrian network here that's in question, starting with the required improvements on Pomona Street. So these required improvements would extend the existing sidewalk or the pedestrian network all the way to the end of the street frontage of Parcel 1 on Pomona Street. This would increase ADA compliance and increase the sidewalk infrastructure by 20 feet. Now, moving. So the pedestrian network on West 7th Street looks like this. So there is sidewalk on one side of West 7th Street where the subject drive approach is located. I highlighted it there on the photo. As you can see on the left-hand side of the photo here, there is no sidewalk that is installed in this location. And this is the location where staff would either require an ADA city standard drive approach or sidewalk panels to be installed to bring the pedestrian network up to city standards, and staff would argue to provide a more effective pedestrian network for all pedestrians. So West 7th Street abuts the parcel 1. This street has been identified by the Safe Routes to School projects. So has a Safe Routes to School project. So for those who aren't, for those who aren't aware what Safe Routes to School does, they provide reports for communities and do a lot of research to identify how we can make safe routes for students to access local schools. So in this, in a recent study that I mentioned here in the staff report, Safe Routes to School identified West 7th Street as needing additional improvements, mainly installing sidewalk where there is one and reducing vehicle speeds. The Dalles Transportation Plan also identifies West 7th Street as needing improvements. So I just wanted to bring that up in the slides here to really kind of highlight that these pedestrian networks are very important to ensure that we do have safe routes to the nearby Chenoweth Elementary School. This is a zoning map around the subject tax lots. So as you can see here, the tax lots are highlighted in red. The general commercial area is in purple. And then you can see that medium density residential is in yellow. So this map kind of illustrates that this pedestrian network, which is a network that connects to other facilities around it, is residential. There is also there is a multifamily development that is 200 feet from parcel 1, the furthest point of parcel 1. And that's just to really highlight that this area of West 7th Street is used or is near a residential area.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
To the zoning, I saw that in the comments from the gentleman, the owner of the hotel,
Mhm.
was talking about this meaning a rezone from commercial to industrial, I think he said.
So I think what he is chatting about is that the existing, so with development, if there is needed to have like an overlay, right? So for like a community facilities, say for like a local utility company. So if they were to expand, then we would entertain, or you guys would hear it changing to a community facilities overlay. And that would be done via a conditional use permit. So it wouldn't need a rezone, but rather an overlay.
That's nothing that's on the table right now.
Not right now, but upon development or redevelopment of a site, possibly.
Likely?
That's up to the property owner. Yeah. Okay. So moving along here. So as I mentioned earlier, I mentioned earlier the deferred development agreement that may be entered into by the applicant and the city of the Dalles. Now, on the original minor partition condition of approval, it stated that all right-of-way improvements abutting parcel 1 and 2 be installed. Staff has changed the condition of approval in this staff report to read as follows. All right-of-way improvements abutting 1 and 2 shall be installed, or an executed deferred development agreement or a DDA with the city consistent with section 10.94060I be recorded prior to final plat approval. So the section is mentioned in this condition of approval because that's the section that really outlines all the requirements of a DDA. So I listed here's commission alternatives. Staff's recommendation is to move to adopt resolution number PC 619A23, a resolution denying appeal 3423 and affirming the community development director's conditional approval of minor partition 423-23 based on the findings of the fact and conclusions of law set forth in the agenda staff report. And then we gave 2 other options as well. So that concludes the staff report. Are there any questions that I can answer?
Can you just clarify what a deferred development agreement like is or what it would allow for?
So in layman's terms, what it could do is like basically the city would enter into agreement with the applicant and they would be able to, upon an agreed upon timeline, be able to install the improvements at a later date. But there are specific conditions to that delayed development agreement.
It would still require them to do the same thing that you're asking. You
Mhm.
could just like do it, take longer to do it, basically.
Right. Yeah, on agreed upon timeline.
Thank
I have a quick question. So, when someone in a residential zone, high density, medium or low, when someone does a minor partition, they don't have to do these improvements, right?
That's correct. The way the code reads now, it's for any non-residential development.
Okay. But since this is zone non-residentially commercial,
Correct.
that's what's prompting this.
Correct.
Okay. So, so does a minor partition mean development?
So the way the code reads that we can require improvements with development, or we can require improvements with a partition application. So in the way that the code reads, a partition or replat would constitute as development.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a clarifying question. So the decision before us right now is it just, do they have to do the improvements on those 2 points, or is it the whole replat?
Just those 2 points is what was outlined in their appeal. So
Shall we hear from the applicant?
Yeah, please.
Okay. Okay. Please, will the applicant come forward and state your name and address for the record and let us have it?
Hello, it's on, right?
I don't think so.
Red light on?
It was on. Now it's on. Okay. Hello, I'm Paul Titus. I'm the interim general manager for Wasco Electric Cooperative. I thank the planning commission for hearing our appeal on this minor partition plat. Just give a little bit of background. Wasco Electric Cooperative is a nonprofit electric utility that serves the rural areas of Wasco, Sherman, and parts of Gillum, Wheeler, and Jefferson counties. To maintain service, safety, service, and reliability, Wasco Electric is working to acquire property adjacent to the warehouse and operation facilities. There is to be no immediate development planned and is to help consolidate lots.
Thanks, Paul, and good to see you, commissioners. I do want to start by saying thank you to the city staff. We've enjoyed obviously working with Josh and Caitlin throughout this process as we do on other projects. I'm Kirk Fatland. I'm a planner with Tennyson Engineering, and we've been working with Paul and the cooperative to get this application going. So as was mentioned in the staff report, the applicant is happy to do, as Commissioner Masher pointed out, do those other improvements on parcel 2, preferably at a later date when development has been determined. Right now, their concern is in the future, they were going to want to develop it and they don't want to have to determine where those driveways may be or other improvements are. It doesn't make sense right now. They're trying to determine what land they have, make sure they get this done, and then they can work on the development proposal. So it's just sort of a process issue. So on that front, they're asking for more time. The applicant doesn't dispute that the applicant should be on the hook for these improvements. Just a timing issue is the point, not saying the city should be responsible for these improvements. So with the other portion, nothing is changing. This is a property line adjustment. Essentially, we're changing property lines. We're not creating new lots. There is no development. We do disagree with that determination that it is development. And I'll pass out, I guess, a bit here. This is the criterion at the front is what we're contesting. And then there's also the definition of development here, which definitely does not include property line. Thanks. Yeah. Sort of our point here is, oh, thanks. The concurrent with development portion of the requirement that we are appealing is that's what we agree with. That's in your code. We think, development, when it occurs, makes sense to apply these improvements. It does make sense that they are there, just not at this time, especially for what the applicant is hoping to plan in the future. And when you look through the definition of development, making a material change in the use or appearance of a structure, internal, external, or land, creation of 3 or more units of land on a single parcel or adjoining pieces of property in a calendar year, changing the land use designation, or creating or terminating a right of access where appropriate to the context. Development refers to the act of developing or the result of development. Development includes, but is not limited to construction, filling, grading, paving, excavating, and drilling. So to us, that makes sense. Your code says it. It makes sense to us also. So our proposal overall is that we accept the options B and C. I think it was 1 and 2 on the slides, that you can amend the decision to say that, the right-of-way improvements abutting parcel 2 only shall be installed or an executed deferred development agreement is provided, which we can work out the details of. The applicant, again, is happy to do the improvements on parcel 2 at a later date. The first ones, it just doesn't make sense. As you say, safe routes to school and everything. I don't think personally that a dip is any different. It doesn't slow traffic to have that be a sidewalk as opposed to a non-used driveway that doesn't go anywhere. I also think the extra 20 feet probably doesn't make it much safer long-term dead ending into gravel. And at the same time, that with parcel 1, if development ever does occur, same thing would be true. If for some reason Mr. Lewis decides to build something there or open a store there, he would come back before you folks and you could require those improvements at that time. It's not saying this is not your one shot to require these improvements. It's my point there. And it doesn't look like it's allowed in the code anyways. And that's my spiel. Did you have anything to add to that, Ben? Okay. I'm happy to answer any questions, as I'm sure Mr. Titus is as well.
If I can ask a question, and Josh Soper might be able to comment on this. The questioning of whether or not this is a development, why was this not brought up when you submitted your appeal application?
It is. We appealed that finding that it's necessarily development, and it's not.
So I believe your appeal was specific to provide for an orderly development of an effective pedestrian network. That is what the appeal said. It said nothing on whether this is the development or not.
But we appealed finding 19. So, and then
Appealed
highlighted
specifically that sentence, that statement that I just made. Not whether or not it's a development. And that is, and Josh, correct me if I'm wrong, but does this go outside of what they initially submitted with their appeal? It should have been a bit more specific than the one sentence that they submitted, I would think.
And Mr. Soper, if you could read what we actually submitted, that'd be helpful too. Thanks.
Sure. So the appeal form said the applicant is appealing finding number 19 of the staff report, which addresses TDMC 10.10.04D. In particular, the applicant contests the staff finding that the 120.76 feet of frontage along West 7th Street and the 20.87 feet of frontage along Pomona Street are necessary to provide for orderly development of an effective pedestrian network. That's the complete language on the explanation of the appeal. I would read that to say that the language after, in particular, the applicant contests, that is the issue that the applicant is contesting. It didn't say the applicant was contesting whether the proposal constitutes development or not.
Would it be wise for the planning commission to go against our code whether or not we appealed it?
No, the scope of the appeal under the city's code, then the planning commission decision is limited to the scope of the appeal. I would also note though, I'm not sure that I'm understanding the applicant's testimony entirely, but it sounds like as described in the staff report, a delayed development agreement meets your request. Is that correct? That would meet your needs?
It partially, Mr. Soper, good point. Yeah, that makes perfect sense for parcel 2, which is the larger parcel where most of the improvements would be required. Only asking the exception for parcel 1 where it doesn't make sense in this context. So yes, for part of it, no for the other part. Does that make sense?
So the scope of the appeal was the developments on West 7th Street and on Pomona Street. Is that number 1 or 2?
Parcel 1, that's parcel 1. So I think to simplify it, our suggestion was to modify condition F that these improvements or the delayed development agreement only apply to parcel 2, which still leaves you as the city in the position of being able to request these improvements if development does occur in the future. But from our perspective, at this point, no development is occurring per your code. There's no purpose in requiring these at the moment. If this passes, there's no greater potential for development. Nothing new occurs. It will remain the same. And you will, if anything does change, you'll be apprised of it and be able to require additional improvements. And
So
I
then
would
would
stand
just
by it. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I would just reiterate for the benefit of the planning commission, the scope of the appeal is that 2 sentences that I read, and it's related to the improvements on West 7th Street and Pomona Street.
And just to clarify, something that you'd said in the staff report, so I'm lining up these two things. You had said that it was at parcel 1 that is already doing something that they don't have a permit for, or was it parcel 2?
It was 1. We didn't find any evidence of a land use approval for a storage facility of recreational vehicles or any other products.
Okay, that's good to note.
I guess to wrap it up, unless Mr. Titus has it for us, I would stand by our language in the appeal. Our intent was to appeal the entire finding and then to specify a little bit for you folks where we're going with this, that in our opinion, the wider pedestrian network is not served by these particular improvements. Yes, improving that overall area would make sense, especially for the safer routes to school, but these little bits, in our opinion, does not add up to a lot. And when we cause greater impact on those areas, the applicant is happy to do that. It's just that impact is not occurring at this moment. So that's, unless you have anything else to add, Mr. Titus.
No, it just goes back to the impact that would have on, especially the small portion along Pomona Street, which would still have the same look after improvements on parcel 1. And then the need of an existing sidewalk that has been there for over 40 years with no large impacts to its current configuration. And it's not, like I said, it's not changing the use of the land, and it's not being developed at this portion on parcel 1. Parcel 2, which we would retain ownership as Wasco Electric, we would be looking at, again, of not changing any current use right now, but we would be looking in the future, and of course, coming back through city codes and putting in improvements as necessary as findings would be appropriate for a delayed development portion only on parcel 2.
Which is our suggested language if you choose to move forward with this as an amended resolution, that we go forward with it as requested with parcel 2 and not with parcel 1. And in our opinion, even doing it for parcel 2 is a stretch, but the applicant is happy to do it because they plan on improving it at some point. So that's their goal. Thank you.
So actually, does anyone have any immediate thoughts? Bear with me for a second. This may be outside the scope of this appeal. There are things, improvements that you would rather not do. But there are things on parcel 2 development that you think would prompt these improvements. Leaving parcel 1 aside, I guess I'm wondering if you have plans for parcel 2, which I believe is parcel 2 remaining unchanged?
In what way? As far as no developments proposed, like they don't have a site plan ready for what they're gonna do there yet. They're trying to square this away. Is that your question?
No, my question is parcel 2 remaining unchanged as far as like its size?
No, it's getting larger. So as a step, there's like 6 tax lots and
Right.
so it'll be larger than it is now.
It increases just a little bit over an acre in size.
Right. I knew that. I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
Since you don't have a site plan for parcel 2 and there is no plan for what is to happen, we have to assume that the intention, and whether the intention, because you aren't identifying that it's going to happen here or happen there, there is no site plan for either. We have to assume that your intention is to develop both of these lots beyond the actual definition of what development is, which we can argue about all day, but that's not part of the appeal. So I don't understand how you can separate the two when it's not about what you're going to do later. It's about what's happening with the application now. And the application now is a minor partition, which is considered development as far as the application of what we know now is. That's not for us to argue at this point. So I don't understand how you could say, well, we want to develop this one part, but we don't have plans to develop parcel 1, so we shouldn't do that now. I mean, as far as we know, you don't have plans to develop parcel 2 either.
Can I respond?
Sure.
I definitely know what you mean. And I think if this were a subdivision or, if we're creating lots, like your development definition says, if you're creating something that's going to add burden, definitely get this done at this time. This is your chance to get that done, get those improvements in. Because like you say, we may say we're going to develop something and these guys sell it tomorrow and nothing happens and you missed your chance. This is, in my opinion, this is not the case here, where, yeah, they're going to do something in the future, at which time you'd require something. Our point is with parcel 1, nothing is changing. There will be, if you were dividing land to create additional parcels, you would be adding potential burdens there that should be addressed now. But since they are not, this is not your one shot. It's not the only opportunity to get those done.
Sure, but as this application is, which is the only thing we have to go on,
Right.
nothing is changing with parcel 2 either.
Right. And that's why we're saying, but we're happy to do it because it's going to happen anyways.
But that's not doing something with the land is not what prompts these improvements. The minor partition prompts the improvements.
We disagree with that, obviously, but
that's not what the application, that's not what the appeal is about.
that's your staff's opinion of that. We disagree on that. I believe we encapsulated that in appealing the entire finding, but that's your guys's determination. To us, it's not development. We're not adding any pressure to this area. There's no possible increase in development because of this.
Okay.
The applicant is saying they're happy to do it for the other one. It may be contradictory. They're trying to be amenable to what you guys are looking at, but overall, it doesn't appear to us that the code allows you folks to require that improvements of either of those parcels, but the applicant's happy to do the deferred development agreement for the larger one.
Well, let me just, for argument's sake, or, for conversation. Let's talk about this definition of development, if we may. Making a material change in the use or appearance of a structure or land. Is making land bigger a material change? Is making what you own a material change?
Just no, it on paper, but material to me means in reality and on the ground. Especially at the bottom of the definition, it talks about grading and filling. To me, that's clarifying what's above. Because yeah, I looked at that as well, and it seems like it's very clearly trying to avoid saying that it's something happening on paper. It says material. So that's our interpretation. And to me, it's very clearly saying when something happens on this property, and that's not what we're proposing.
So
You don't intend to pave over this particular parcel at this time?
Sorry, could you say it one more time?
Not intending to pave over or grade this particular parcel? at this
Right.
time?
It's just trying to get these property lines figured so that they can get to work on a site plan and come up with what the cooperative is going to do next is their development, and maybe Paul, something to add there.
No, that is correct. We don't have any intents of changing the current use of the property and or adding any pavement or anything along those lines. We would go back into hiring either Tennyson or another firm to study the property, the larger property in question, to determine how it best fits our needs, and then apply for proper permitting through the city for development, increased development beyond what its current use is.
My thought is, it seems pretty clear to me that the applicant is perfectly willing to do these improvements when there is material change happening to the property. That makes sense to me. Why is it important to us, to the city, to have those improvements done now if we know that they will be done when there is material development happening there? It's not like we're losing out on something, it's just a question of time.
And I don't think we're asking for them to be done right now. There's a deferred development agreement that's in front of them. And it's whether or not the city wants it, that is what the code says. So it's either install it now or enter into a deferred development agreement. So.
And the deferred development agreement, does that have fixed timelines to it?
No, it's an agreement that would have to be negotiated between the applicant and the city. It's something that requires an engineer's estimate on how much it would cost to put these improvements in. It would either require that the applicant put the money up, basically cash, provide cash for those improvements to the city, or open a surety bond. So ensuring that in the event that the applicant does not do the improvements, the city has the money to do those improvements. So it's not just a handshake type of agreement. It's something that is, it still will be an investment for the applicant to enter into a deferred development agreement.
And so that would be the alternative right now.
Yeah, it would be the alternative or installing now. Those would be the two options.
But they're specifically saying that they only want to do the deferred development agreement on plot 2, that they do not want to do anything with plot 1, not even the deferred development agreement.
That is correct.
Okay.
Because the applicant does not feel that. Because the applicant does not feel that this is development.
And may I add one point of clarification?
Sure.
The improvements would need to be installed prior to final plat approval. So you don't have to get the final plat approval. You could get extensions on your timelines, things like that. So that is, just wanted to put that out there.
The agreement, you can enter into an agreement or install.
Right. It's just not installing it now. It's just prior to final plat approval.
Okay. Do we have any other questions for the appellant? Excuse me.
No.
Okay. Mark, do you have any other questions
No.
or thoughts?
Can we add a little bit more context?
Sure.
Just about the difference, why we see the difference between the two parcels. basically one is a public entity, the Wasco Electric Cooperative, and then the other is a private property owner. So is what's happened is the Wasco Electric has, purchased some property from these folks who are planning on doing that. They're in a different position than that property owner to do developments. And we're looking at these in different ways because of that. They're under different ownership. So just to keep that in mind, that this application is for the purpose of hopefully doing future development on one parcel and the other parcel likely staying the same. So it's just kind of different. It's not one.
Sure, but going back to the beginning of this, the application has no indication of anything that you would do to change what is happening to the property. Based on the definition that is in the city code of development, making a material change in the use or appearance of a structure or land, which we can get to that in a second. It's the development that prompts the change. The development is being prompted by two applicants, and it doesn't matter if it's a public entity or a private owner. The applicant, your buddies. I mean, you are essentially one applicant for the sake of the application.
Exactly. And I was just explaining sort of why we are handling each parcel different. Just to clarify, it obviously doesn't change.
That's I
how
think
you
that's
process it.
that's
exactly
completely
correct.
internal issue for you,
Right.
not for us.
No, I'm just explaining why. That's all. You're right. Collectively, those two property owners are the applicant.
Yeah. And what's interesting is that the property owner is not on the appeal. The property owner for parcel 1 isn't here and he's not on the appeal. That's kind of weird, isn't it?
I don't think so. One applicant is driving this, as Caitlin pointed out. This is not being done to that other applicant. In the end, the final plat, of course, has to be signed by all parties. So there's no, as you know, these are two-step processes. Now it's 3, but you have the preliminary approval and then you have final plat approval, and a lot of things, sidewalk improvements can happen in between those things. So there's no.
Well, I think just to your point, you're saying a public entity such as Wasco Electric has the ability to make these improvements, whereas the private person may not have the ability to make those improvements.
And I'm not
Right.
making that assumption. I'm just saying they're in different situations because one is trying to utilize the property, the other is just trying to stay the same. So it's just.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But you get what I'm saying,
do, yeah.
because the person who can't make the improvements isn't the person who says, I don't want to make these improvements. Excuse me. The person who owns parcel 1 is not the person who says, I don't want to make the improvements. It's
Sure,
the
as you
person
say,
who
we're
doesn't want to have anything to do with it.
In this moment.
It's just kind of weird. Okay. Any other questions for the applicant? Okay. Thank you. We may ask further questions depending on who else speaks.
Thank you all.
Okay. Does anyone wish to testify in favor of the application? No. Does anyone wish to testify in opposition to the application? Okay. Does anyone wish to testify? Does anyone wish to testify that is not in favor of opposition or just like to ask some general questions? Okay. Do the commissioners feel they have enough information to make a decision? Or do we need to ask more questions of the staff, or?
I'm ready.
You're okay? Okay. You all good? Maria?
I'm good.
Okay. The public hearing is now closed. Let's discuss. Any initial thoughts or anything from anyone?
I guess there's no problem with, delaying this until they actually do something with the property.
That's what I feel too. I think that the deferred maintenance agreement or whatever it's called makes sense. I agree. I think the deferred maintenance agreement makes sense to me.
Yeah, for both parcels, in my opinion.
For both parcels?
And I would make a motion to go with staff recommendation.
Make a motion to go with staff recommendation.
Oh. Well, that would be denying their appeal, right?
Correct. That would be denying their appeal and, excuse me. Conditions required. Do we need to add verbiage into your recommendation about the deferred development agreement?
No, we added it in for the appeal. Yeah. So it's in there. Initially, it was just install improvements. Now there's the opportunity to install or do the DDA, but it's for both parcels. And then the conditions and agreement will be handled at another date between city staff and the applicants. We won't bore you with those details tonight.
Go. Would you like to formally make that motion?
Yes, I formally make a motion to go with staff's recommendation of let's see. Got that read for you. To move to adopt a resolution number PC 619A-23, a resolution denying appeal 034-23 and affirming the community development director's conditional improvement of minor partition 423-23 based upon the findings of the fact and conclusions of the law set forth in the agenda staff report.
A second.
Okay. It has been motioned to adopt resolution number PC 619A-23 and it has been seconded. All in favor of moving to adopt resolution number PC 619A-23, raise your right hand, and say aye.
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 All those not in favor, say nay.
Hey,
Nay. Okay, so that is 1, 2, 3, 4 ayes, 2 nays.
yeah.
Okay. We only need 4, correct? Okay. Okay. Moving on to the resolution. Resolution, because that resolution PC 619A-23 was voted 4 ayes to 2 nays. It is moving on to. Now we vote on the actual resolution, correct? Excuse me. Thank you. We are moving on to adopt resolution number PC 619A-23 denying appeal application 034-23 Wasco Electric Cooperative and affirming the community development director's a conditional approval of minor partition 423-23, requesting approval to replat those certain parcels depicted in assessor's map number 2N 13E 32AA as tax lots 1300, 1400, 1600, 1700, 1801, and 1990 into 2 reconfigured parcels. Property is located at 730 Pomona Street and 3021 West 7th Street in the Dalles, Oregon. Property is zoned general commercial district. All those in favor of excuse me, may I please have a motion to adopt this resolution?
A motion to adopt the resolution.
I second.
All in favor to adopt resolution number PC 619A-23, raise your right hand, say aye.
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 Aye, that is 4 ayes. All those not in favor, say nay.
Hey,
That's 2 nays. And no one left to abstain. Okay. So that concludes the quasi judicial public hearing and the resolution. We are now moving on to the next agenda item, staff comments and project updates.
Yeah, thank you. So just looking ahead next week or the next time we're meeting, October 19th, we have a continuation of appeal 033-23. This is for Meadow Outdoor Advertising. Following up in our first meeting in November, we're going to be coming back and talking briefly about the housing needs analysis. And this would be the step where we are recommending approval. And then after recommending approval, it would go to city council. And then we're looking at probably targeting the last meeting in November, if not the first meeting in December, to bring the RV park code back to you. This is one that, you know, we had a shuffle with the state's housing requirements or housing definitions, if you will, regarding RVs. So we're gonna work with the state again, have them take a look at a new draft if they have any red flags on that one. There shouldn't be any. I think we're proposing some modifications to it that wouldn't be classified per the state as housing. So therefore, just looking at them as commercial ventures more so. And I think I believe that was the intent of the commission when we set out on this. And then other than that, just kind of crossing over in some other news. So you've probably seen we've now started the actual demolition of the Tony's building. So we had an abatement crew come in and the building was abated. Had a clean bill of health about a month ago. So everything, all the hazardous material has been removed from the building. The demo crew started. They mobilized on Monday and they have been slowly chipping away at the building. They're probably going to do a lot of handwork for a little while. The big thing right now is disconnecting the joints or the membrane or not the membrane, but really the joints and the members that hold the Tony's building to the adjacent building. So that is kind of the first step. And then they're also not only a demo company, but they're also a recycling and salvage company. So they're going through and salvaging as much wood, timber, any other material that they can get their hands on. I went by today. If you go by in the back parking lot, there's a big stack of 2x12s that, you know, it's probably real 2x12s because it was built, you know, maybe long ago enough that, but yeah,
You know,
how old's that one? So the records say about 1920 for that building. But it seems a little confusing. I know the building is constructed a CMU block, and I don't know if that was as common in the 20s. So just looking at
Had a lot back then.
okay. So it's unclear. I know when they were taking some of the pieces off, they found a newspaper from 1950 stuffed in parts of the roof. And back then in the Dalles, 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, $7,500. So any case, times have changed. Well,
By a hair, just a little bit.
and with that, more than happy to answer questions, but I think I'm good.
Yeah, I have no questions. Any commissioner comments or thoughts? Anybody?
awesome to finally be going with that project.
Yeah, it's great.
And the one I saw that they're like really far along with the one next to Scoopers, the ice cream place.
Yeah.
So the recreation building, I think it'll probably always be known as the recreation building, but that is, a really exciting project. They are putting the first coats of stucco on it. So that's a really awesome project. If you don't know too much about that building, it's going to be an outdoor venue, music venue, actually. It's a really cool design. The owner's done a great job. He's really both the developers have put a lot of care and heart into developing that property. I think many people would have walked away when the roof collapsed, but I think they looked at it and they made lemonade out of it ultimately. And I think the design is going to be really cool. They've created a roofing system in there, a drain roof system, so it can actually rain on the inside, go through some tracks, and it'll be filtered through a couple of roof drains. So it'll be, good for all year long. But that should be very exciting. So hopefully first part of next year in the spring, maybe it'll be open.
All right, all good?
All good.
All right, thanks, everyone. Meeting adjourned.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, Maria.